In the year 1602, in the small, watery, newly independent Dutch Republic, a group of merchants created something the world had never seen before. Not a new coin, not a new bank, but a new kind of creature entirely. A business that was owned by thousands of complete strangers all at once. A business that could outlive every single one of its owners, and a business that would grow so vast and so powerful that it commanded fleets, waged wars, built forts, and ruled distant lands on the far side of the earth. They had invented the corporation, and to fund this monster, they accidentally invented something just as world changing, a machine that prices the entire world, the stock market. We left off with the Waqf, the endowment that pooled wealth in order to preserve it forever, quietly, for the public good. Now watch the very same human instinct, the pooling of money into a single lasting institution, turned toward a wildly, radically different purpose. Not charity, but profit. Not permanence for the poor, but risk, ambition, and the pursuit of wealth on a scale never before imagined in human history. To understand why this was needed, picture the great challenge of the age: global trade by sea. A single ship, sent from Europe all the way to the Spice Islands of Asia, could return home carrying an absolute fortune. Pepper, nutmeg, cloves, and cinnamon were worth staggering sums back in Europe, but the danger was immense, almost unimaginable. These voyages took years, not weeks. Storms swallowed ships whole. Pirates prowled the trade routes. Disease could kill an entire crew before they ever reached home. Fund a single voyage all by yourself and lose that one ship, and you were utterly ruined, wiped out completely. The potential reward was enormous, but so was the risk. It was simply too much for any one merchant, however wealthy, to safely bear alone. The Dutch found a brilliant, elegant solution to this problem. Instead of one person funding one dangerous voyage, why not let a great many people share the cost and crucially share the risk across many voyages at once? So they created a single giant company, the Dutch East India Company, and they did something revolutionary. They invited the general public to invest in it. Almost anyone, from a wealthy merchant to a shopkeeper to an ordinary citizen with modest savings, could hand over their money to the company, and in return, they received a piece of paper, a document representing their own personal share of the entire company. This was the birth of the share, what we also call stock. If you owned shares in the company, then you owned a small slice of absolutely everything that company did. Every ship on the ocean, every cargo of spices, every warehouse and trading post scattered across Asia. You were, in a small but very real way, an owner, and when the company made a profit, you received a portion of that profit, paid out to you in proportion to how many shares you held. This payment had a name, a dividend, and notice how beautifully this arrangement solved the terrifying problem of risk. Instead of betting your entire fortune on a single ship that might sink, your money was now spread thinly across the company's many dozens of voyages. If one ship went down in a storm, it was no longer a personal catastrophe. It was just a small loss, easily cushioned by all the other ships that returned safely, their holds full of treasure. The risk had been divided and shared among thousands of people. And so, for the very first time in history, ordinary people could safely invest in grand, world-changing ventures without gambling everything they owned. But there was one more piece of pure genius built into this design, an idea so powerful that it quietly underpins almost the entire modern economy, even today. It is called limited liability. Here is what it meant. If the company were to fail completely or fall deep into debt, the absolute most you could ever lose was the money you had originally chosen to put in, not one coin more. Your house was safe, your personal savings were safe, All your other possessions were completely untouchable, no matter how much the company itself owed. Think about how important that is, because each investor's risk was now capped, limited, and known in advance. Enormous numbers of people suddenly felt safe enough to invest. Nobody had to fear that one bad investment would cost them their home and their family's future. Limited liability, this simple and elegant idea, is what made the modern corporation truly possible. But now a brand new question arose. Naturally, suppose you owned shares in the company, but then you needed your money back, perhaps next year, long before the company was due to pay out. You could not simply walk up to the company and demand your investment back. Your money was already out at sea, tied up in ships and cargo. So a clever solution emerged all on its own without anyone planning it. You could simply sell your shares to somebody else. Another person who wanted to become an owner would buy your slice from you for an agreed price. And so buyers and sellers of these shares began to gather together regularly in the city of Amsterdam to trade shares back and forth among themselves. And this gathering, this bustling marketplace for buying and selling ownership itself, grew into the world's first true stock exchange. And here, in this marketplace, something genuinely profound was born, something that would go on to shape the entire modern world. At this exchange, the price of a single share was not fixed. It was not set by any king or any official or the company itself. Instead, the price moved. It lived. If exciting news arrived at the harbor that the company's ships were returning, their holds packed with valuable spices, then people would rush to buy shares and the price would climb. But if word came that a whole fleet had been lost in a terrible storm, then people would scramble to sell and the price would tumble. The share price had become a living, breathing thing, rising and falling hour by hour with every fresh scrap of news, every flicker of hope, and every stab of fear. And this reveals one of the single most important ideas in all of finance. A stock market is, in essence, a giant machine for pricing things, moment by moment, minute by minute. It takes the scattered knowledge, the guesses, the hopes, and the fears of thousands upon thousands of different people, and it gathers all of it together and distills it all down into one single simple number, the share price. At any given instant, that price represents the entire crowd's best collective guess at what the company is truly, really worth. No single person knows the answer, but the market, by letting everyone trade, blends all their partial knowledge into a price. It is one of the most powerful information machines ever created, and the Dutch East India Company itself grew into an absolute titan. For a long stretch of time, it was arguably the single most valuable company in all of human history. It became almost impossibly powerful. It had its own private army. It had its own navy of warships. It could sign treaties with foreign rulers, wage its own wars, seize territory, and govern distant lands, functioning almost like a sovereign nation in its own right. A private business owned by ordinary shareholders back home that wielded the raw power of an empire. And it is important to tell this part honestly. That imperial power had a dark and often brutal side. In its relentless pursuit of profit and control over the spice trade, the company used violence, coercion, and at times terrible cruelty against the peoples of the lands it dominated. The wealth that flowed back to those shareholders in Amsterdam often came at a very heavy human cost, far away, out of sight. But the financial model itself, the joint stock company, spread across the world like wildfire. This new invention, a company funded by tradable shares, protected by limited liability, and priced by a public market, became the fundamental engine of the modern economy. Almost every single large business you know today, every corporation whose shares are traded on a stock exchange anywhere on earth, is a direct descendant of what those Dutch merchants first created back in 1602. But this powerful new machine had a hidden danger buried deep inside it, a flaw waiting to be exposed. Think carefully. If a share is truly worth whatever people are simply willing to pay for it, then what happens when people lose their minds? What happens when calm hope curdles into feverish greed? When a rising price convinces everyone to buy, not because the company is sound, but simply because the price is going up and they expect it to keep going up? The very same mechanism that priced things so brilliantly, that gathered the wisdom of the crowd so beautifully, could also, under the right kind of madness, become unmoored. It could detach completely and dangerously from all reality. And that madness was coming. It was almost here. And astonishingly, the very first time this new financial insanity would grip an entire nation, it would not be over ships or spices or silver or gold. It would be over a simple, delicate, and beautiful flower. And that is where we go next. If you're enjoying the journey, subscribe and turn on notifications. New episodes drop almost every day. Leave a like and jump into the comments. That's where the best discussions happen.